I was to give somebody advice on starting a company, I would say off the bat from the beginning, the 3 people that I wish I had hired first things was a great lawyer, a great accountant, and a great therapist. The more self-worth you have, the more you know who you are, and you don't let anybody else tell you what you're worth, or whether your music or your book or your idea is good or not, and you have that knowing in yourself. And even if it's not great from somebody else's eyes, that's not a reflection of you and who you are. The more you can get there, I think it takes time, it takes self-work, it takes deprogramming, the less it affects you. And I do feel that you can get to a place where it doesn't affect you. I do believe that.
Our guest today is making waves in 2 of the biggest showbiz and media capitals of the world, Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. She's a charismatic entrepreneur who has successfully launched and grown Crumbs and Whiskers Cat Cafes when she was only 24 years old. In addition to their great coffee and their cozy cafes, Crumbs and Whiskers provides a safe and nurturing environment where cats are given a loving, temporary home while waiting to find their forever families. Welcome to the show, author of inspirational book, Dear Me, I Love You, which is now available to pre-order on her website. She's an all-around amazing human being, Kanchan Singh.
Hey, Mike. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here. Here's the coolest part about this. I love doing my show every single week, but a lot of times we're talking about things in the past and some really cool brag book items and things people have achieved, and it's incredible, right? I mean, I've had Olympic athletes on, a gold medalist, and all kinds of really cool things. What I love about your story, Kanchan, you're doing it right now. It's happening. Your book is in the works. It's coming out. When we record this, it's close to the release date. That's why I mentioned pre-order on your website, which people can find at kanchanofficial.com, and I'll spell it for them. It's KANCHAN official.com. And then also crumbsandwhiskers.com is the company site. But you have a lot going on in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've been interviewed by incredible people, and I just appreciate you taking the time to be on our show with our audience. And I kind of told you off camera why I do the show, and it's like I could see you lit up with energy because you're so excited about delivering that, right?
Yeah, no, and thank you for having me. And it's the same reason why I write and why I share my stories, to help people connect with themselves and go after their dreams. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, we are in alignment there. Hey, look, I love coffee. I love cats. So naturally, the mission of Crumbs and Whiskers, it resonated with me when I saw your story come over. I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. So I'm excited to learn more about you as well. That's kind of the focus of the story today is your incredible journey. So are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So again, guys, thank you for being with us and tuning in. Kanchan's available to connect with on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. The websites, again, are crumbsandwhiskers.com and kanchanofficial.com. And those links are all clickable in the show notes, keeping things super, super easy. So here's what I'd love to do to start your story. If you can bring us back to the 13-year-old girl who's growing up in India, moving to Singapore for a brief time, and then at about age 14, you make that big move to the States, living in Maryland, and then residing in LA. That's a lot of movement, especially for a 14-year-old. And 10 years later, you have your company and you've been raising money on Kickstarter and all kinds of amazing things. So I'm going to shut up and just tell me how you get yourself, from India to the LA and eventually into the woman that you are today.
Well, the 13-year-old girl was very terrified. I think, 13 is a time when all we want is acceptance and to belong. And my personal story in India at the time was we had moved around in India quite a bit too. And different areas of India are very different. It's a very dynamic country. And where I was moving up, I'd been bullied for 7 years and really didn't fit in, even though it's my country. And when I finally fit in, right, like when I finally made my friends, we got the news that we were moving, and I was so upset. I would run away from home. I would do hunger
Mm-hmm.
strikes. I would, I made us miss our flight to Singapore at the time, like 3 times or something like that. And the move to Singapore was rough, but we always knew that was temporary because we knew the end goal was the US. So like I was more so busy rebelling against the US move. Singapore kind of almost just felt like this weird holiday. And Singapore also is a very wildly different country. And for a while I was like, please don't tell me I have to go to school here. I was a very rebellious teenager. I was very like angry about it, like what was happening.
I mean, it's devastating. You finally were feeling comfortable with friends, and that's so important to children, is to build these relationships with people of your own age. Like, it's important to have relationships with your siblings and, of course, your parents, but also, like, having that friendship grow on the playground at school it's really detrimental, and science has shown it, to have a natural childhood like that. And yours was getting a little bit at that point pulled away from you. It definitely was. So when you got to Singapore and eventually the States, can you talk about how you had to kind of adapt on your feet to the different cultures? And did you eventually in LA find a sweet spot to become yourself?
Yeah, I would say that I was in culture shock after moving to the US, probably for a solid like 4 years. I stopped doing everything I loved. I used to play basketball in India, and then my first day, my gym teacher was like, "You need to be on the team." And I went to tryouts, and I was so intimidated by everyone because nobody looked like me that I left crying. And I didn't pick up basketball again. So like I stopped doing the things I loved. I felt like a freak. Like I had this like really thick Indian accent. You convert rupees to dollars and you no longer have money. And so like my family, we couldn't, all of our furniture was from the trash, and like there were like cockroaches everywhere, and we were like in a Motel 6, and like we couldn't, in India you have uniforms, you don't wear casual clothes to school, and like we didn't have the money for casual clothes. And so it was awful. And I hated it. Like, it's not like we were rich in India, but we could afford things in India. I hated like having to live off of like Domino's and Taco Bell and like not be able to afford anything and dumpster dive for like our furniture and like to go to school. The worst part was going to school and like every time I opened my mouth, I was reminded of how alien I was because of the way I talked. And
You got a lot of those looks like, wait, what did you say? Or, oh, you're
yeah,
not from here, are you?
a
Yeah,
lot of like snickering and like laughing
sure.
behind my back, which is like really crushing.
So that was your initial welcome to the US, was this like tightness of this call. It's going to take a minute for me to get used to the culture and the culture to get used to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then how long before you eventually moved to LA? Was that something you did on your own, or did your family move there?
No, I actually am not close with my family. So I moved here on my own. I moved here to open the second location of Crumbs and Whiskers. So this is like
Cool.
fast forward like a solid like 10, 12, 11 years.
This is a vision board. I want to do that, and you freaking did it. Like, you went and did it.
Yeah, it wasn't even on a vision board as much as it was like, I was like, I think I'm going to open a second location. And then I was like, where should my second location be? And I knew my goal for my company was to make it like the pop culture cat cafe. Like, and I was like, well, if I want to be the pop culture cat cafe, I need to be where pop culture happens, which is LA. And then I looked on Google Trends at like search volumes, and I just mapped out the search term cat cafe against like cities, right? And like I was
Right.
mapping out which cities are people searching cat cafe in, but they don't have a cat cafe. So there's a demand for it. And so that's easy because then I can be the supply. And LA topped the list. So like it was more of a gut instinct first, but then the data was also like, yes, LA.
That's awesome. It sounds like you kind of came out there and had like a rebirth of your character and your confidence. I mean, talking to you, I can see that you've made a transformation. I've watched some of the other interviews that you've done over the years, and I think it's incredible. I think it's important for people to make sure that they're giving back to themselves. And that's what your book is all about. Dear you, or Dear Me, I Love You. And I think it's beautiful. And like hearing that, I didn't read one page of it yet. I mean, I'm going to pre-order that, but I can tell just from your vibe of what's going to be, that's going to be a heavy book. That's a heavy book. It had to be a heavy book to write. So we'll cover that. But I'd love you to actually, how earlier I was talking about the brag book items. And I do want you to do some of that because this company that you've created is absolutely amazing. Crumbs and Whiskers is super cool. This is probably a little dated, but looking at some of the notes here, this is in the past 5 years. I mean, your cafes have rescued over 3,500 cats and raised thousands of dollars for animal welfare charities. You have some incredible celebrity clients. I know like Drew Barrymore was on the list, Jennifer Garner, Keith Urban, I believe, and many others. So do a little bit of bragging for a second here. Like, let's pretend someone's just meeting you and they're like, yeah, tell me about this cafe idea you got. And you're like, let me really tell you what's going on.
God, I'm horrible at bragging. People are always
well,
like, you downplay yourself so much. And I'm like, I don't know. This is weird. So Crumbs and Whiskers, I started at 24 and, to fund it, I did a Kickstarter campaign and we raised, it was going to be my savings and the Kickstarter funding. And we raised our goal in one night and then we doubled that over the course of the campaign. On our first day in business, I remember when like bookings opened up to the Cat Cafe, all of our systems crashed for the whole day. And then when we got in like a day later, we had done like $22,000 in ticket sales. And these were like $8 tickets at the time. So it was a lot of tickets.
That's a high volume.
Yeah. And
so you were like, okay, we're set for 2 months of people coming in the door.
Yeah.
But were everybody booked on the same day then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy.
No, not everyone booked on the same day, but for like 2 months. So they were not all
okay. So there weren't overlap. It wasn't like you're trying to pack 2,000 people.
No. But like everyone did show up on day one though. Like the line was like, I remember like 2 hours before, like I was just getting there to start cleaning and there were like people lining up and I was like, what is going on right now? And
what an awesome feeling, but that's a scary feeling. I know how that goes. It's like you're so excited, but you want to make sure you deliver the best for everybody. So that's like really intense.
I am somebody who is both very risk-taking and daring, and I love my security blanket. I love, and it's a really weird paradox and dichotomy to like try and find my way in the world with, of like wanting to do the biggest things, yet being like, I want to be in the couch with a teddy bear and watch Disney movies. And like that's, you know what I mean? And anyway, so when we opened, I didn't expect that volume. I didn't have the team to support it. It was me and like 4 part-time people, and that was it. And when there was like a line across the block and somebody broke our door open, like literally broke our door down because she couldn't get in because we were fully booked already. Like all the tickets were gone and people were still lining up thinking they could get tickets if they just lined up, when like that wasn't the situation. And so a lady broke down our door and we have like 30 cats in the space. The door cannot be broken. So like we were like, I was like up there with a hammer, like hammering the door up. And
oh my gosh. This is a movie. Your story is literally, I can picture this being like a movie. This is so funny.
And like I even remember when we announced on Twitter, I was just kind of like, oh, I'll put up a landing page. I'll see if there's like a demand for, Cat Cafe in DC. And it became like the most trending thing in DC on Twitter. And it started this whole conversation about how I was a dumb millennial chick who was opening yet another dumb millennial business. And I cried about it for like a month because I would read this stuff and then I would get.
Isn't that how it goes? Like, I know that from I'm a musician as well, entrepreneur, and I don't know what it is. And I'll speak for myself, but we could literally have 10 amazing concerts or 10 successful clients. And then like one person can write some weird review that has no merit or credit. And that just can destroy us. And like, that's how I always wondered how you get the spotlight on you, which is what kind of everyone's dream is growing up. You picture being that rock star or whatever when you start playing drums in 5th grade, like I did. But it's like, could I handle, all these people critiquing our new album or, the sophomore slump album or whatever. And you don't know, but that does destroy people's like mental health,
Mhm.
And so here you are, you got people knocking your door down because you have such an amazing business. You got 4 incredible workers and you're probably ready to hire more at that point. And your team is great, right? You're building this awesome, you're rescuing cats. And then someone writes some negative review about, hey, it's just another millennial trying to do something different. And that really hurts, and that could get you off. And so it's important for anyone who's listening to know darts will be thrown, but you don't have to be the dartboard. You can get out of the way. And if you do let the dart hit, hey, it's okay to not be okay in the moment, but it's important to get back up off the mat, get yourself in the right direction. Is there a way that you found you were able to do that? Is there any advice you can give when someone's kind of feeling down?
Something great you said at the beginning of the interview is that it's still unfolding for me. So, like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still learning that, but I've learned that the more self-worth you have, and this is why I believe in healing and self-work so much, the more self-worth you have, the more you know who you are, and you don't let anybody else tell you what you're worth or whether your music or your book or your idea is good or not. And you have that knowing in yourself, and even if it's not great from somebody else's eyes, that's not a reflection of you and who you are. The more you can get there, I think it takes time, it takes self-work, it takes deprogramming, the less it affects you. And I do feel that you can get to a place where it doesn't affect you. I do believe that.
I agree. And I think someone making a harsh statement like that says more about them than it does you anyway. Like there's some insecurity, and then that's not even throwing a shot back at them. That's like, hey, you need to go and like fix that because you
Mhm.
got some kind of issue. If you're not able to celebrate other entrepreneurial wins, like if someone's trying to shoot your business down because it's not, they think that it's taken away from their business or something, or a musician shooting another musician down in my example, or whatever it is, or a critic is being extra critical for no merit, it says more about their insecurity or something.
Mhm.
But it's still easy to let it hurt, and it does hurt. But it's like you said, important to make sure you remember has really almost nothing to do with you. They don't know your ins and outs. They don't know the hours you're putting in
Mhm.
your business.
Mhm.
So to get back to it again, Crumbs and Whiskers, you have a kitten lounge, which is really cool. And can you walk us through like the walk-in experience when someone comes in, what they're going to get or what they're going
Yeah.
to experience?
Yeah, what people do, so they go online and make a booking, and basically we have a reservation system because we have cats and, we don't want to overwhelm them. We want like a very tight flow in and out. And then when you make a reservation, you come in, you check in, you place like your food and drink orders. So like you get a coffee and a banana bread or whatever, and then you go in and there's like 30 cats who are all safe from risk of euthanasia, up for adoption, and they own the place, they rule the place, so they'll kind of be like napping and playing and like climbing walls and whatever, and you just kind of find spots. And we go through the house rules with you, which is like, there's the way the space is set up, it's basically a lot of giant human-sized cat beds because we wanted people and cats to like interact, so it's not normal furniture, it's
Yeah.
human-sized cat beds.
Extra large. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and so like,
encourages the snuggle sessions that people
yes,
can get,
it's a snuggle spot for sure. And so, like, we give you the house rules like, hey, be gentle with the cats, don't like pull their tails. If you're gonna plop on pillows, make sure you look under the pillows. There might be a kitten there, like all of that. And then you go and you hang out with cats. And like, our hosts walk around and they'll tell you their stories. They'll tell you, like, this is where they like our cats all have like rags to riches stories because they were all,
Yeah.
up for like in a cage somewhere or like on the street somewhere, and now they're in this like fabulous, most people who come there are like, your cats are living in a better like accommodation than my home. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, so like we tell you their stories, we tell you their personalities, you play with them, you snuggle with them. People take like a million Instagram photos and TikTok videos over there. It's like the spot for that. And then if you fell in love with a cat, you apply to adopt. And if not, hopefully you leave with your heart full, and everyone that leaves always says we feel no guilt because, like, unlike was visiting shelter cats, any rescue cats anywhere else, you feel guilty. But like here, you really don't, because you see how much the staff loves them and how well cared for they
Yeah.
are.
And they're not going to be there probably too long anyways with the high volume of opportunities as people come in. That's cool. So you have the application process. I never thought about that, but you're going to have numerous people who like the same cat and, so however that works.
Yeah, each of our cats gets like 8 applications, and it's the whole situation over there. Yeah.
They got the little strut at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'm out. And I'm sure they're probably like, oh man, I missed that. That was a cool, little like a hotel for them, kind of like with all their buddies hanging out. That's super cool. I love that story. I know it's like I said, it's over 3,500 cats. I mean, that's even an older number. It's way over that now, which is cool. And then on top of it, as I mentioned, I love coffee. Everybody, most people love coffee, I should say, right? Let's make sure I'm not overdoing it here, but most people love coffee. And you're in DC and LA. I mean, people are coming for their great cup of coffee from all over anyway. So is that something that when you come in, there's kind of like a cafe set up so you can sit there and then you bring your cup of coffee in to mingle with the cats?
Yeah, so because of Department of Health rules, the way we decided to work with not being able to mix coffee and cats is we just outsourced it. So how it works is, and this is something I should have explained. So you either get like a 30-minute visit or a 70-minute visit. And so when you come in at the beginning, you place your food and drink orders. That goes directly to another small business, another coffee shop that preps those orders and delivers them. And so I call it like cafe but with restaurant wait times, because you have to wait like 15 minutes to get your food and drinks, but all of that is done out of house by another small business. Yeah.
So then someone comes in and they would be like, hey Mike, we have your black coffee, like venti or whatever it would be. Cool.
Yeah,
that's a hit. And then on top of that, it's the meet and greet with the little kitties and the lounge and all that. That's cool. What I'd love to do is hear a little bit more about some of your biggest wins. It's been 5 years, so you have many things that are going to be those kind of memorable moments that always stick out. Can you share some of those, like just some of the biggest wins that pop in your head right now when you think about it?
Opening in LA and having BuzzFeed cover us and getting like 15 million views on that. And here's the big loss there, though. We only had reservations open for 2 weeks. And so it got booked real quick. And then all these people came and they couldn't on our website and were calling us, but they couldn't book, which was sad. But it was still really cool to be covered by them. We're a stop now on the TMZ bus tour in LA because so many celebrities have been seen there that we actually got added to a TMZ bus tour, which is really cool and not something I saw coming. Obviously, like the number of cats that we've saved, right? Like that's an everyday thing. So it's hard for me to even describe that. That is like one big win because every day we are saving cats. And, but like in terms of the cause, when the Houston floods happened, like there were a lot of rescue efforts for dogs, but not much for cats. And so like we donated like over $8,000 for cats to be rescued from the floods. And then like we've actually had cats come in from like different floods or like natural disasters across the US and sometimes even like overseas. And so we've had like cat. Yeah. So that's,
and you partner with shelters too, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
something where you have a bunch of partners that say, hey, and you let them know, are you always making room for new cats, or is because it's so popular, there's a lot of flow of
There's
in
a
and
lot
out?
Of flow, yeah.
Yeah. That's got to be hard though for you. Like, you connect every little kitten that makes eye contact with you, makes that connection. And I'm sure you're excited to see them go on to a beautiful home, but it's also like, it pulls it. And then all of a sudden a new little guy comes in or a little kitten, little girl comes in and you fall in love all over again.
Yep. I used to be a mess in the beginning. Like people would come to pick up their pets and I would be like crying in a corner and they're like, we can leave them here. And I'm like, no, take your pet. And my employees were always like, you're embarrassing the rest of us. Like, please stop. But I luckily no longer work at the cafe. So like, I'll still get attached to specific cats, but it's not as bad anymore than when I used to work
I'm going to the back room. I'll be
Yep.
right back. Give me a second. You
And
come
then
back
just
and your
go
face is
bawl
all
my
red.
eyes out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you know what? You have a heart for it, and that's what led you in this direction. You're the right person for this. Like, obviously, what you're doing is amazing and it's working. So, you definitely had a calling and you felt it. And then, what I encourage everyone who's listening to the story right now is, what's your heart calling? What's it telling you to do? And like Kanchan, she took action on it, and now look, she's got 2 beautiful locations, and she continues to grow. So I think that's amazing. Now, we talked about some of your wins. Just curious on the business before we do dive into your book with the last few minutes. If you can go back and maybe do something differently since opening your business, is there anything that jumps out that you're like, hey, other budding entrepreneurs don't do this, or
I
this can
feel,
hinder you?
I feel that this is always this like very paradoxical question, because if I did something differently, my story would have unfolded differently. So like I'm like, there's nothing I would do differently, because then it would change the way things have unfolded. But if I was to give somebody advice on starting a company, I would say off the bat from the beginning, the three people that I wish I had hired first things was a great lawyer, a great accountant, and a great therapist. I wish I had all three from the beginning, because
Yeah.
I needed all three.
Lawyer,
I really
accountant,
did.
therapist, right?
Yeah.
Would be the big 3. So there you go. I mean, and I appreciate you saying that, because as you were saying about the thing about, making the right decision or perfect decisions, obviously the fact that you're a real human being, and your story is your story, that imperfection is what's perfect. That's your
Mhm.
perfect story, even though
Mhm.
there's imperfections in it. And progress is really the key word, right? And
Mhm.
I learned that at my CrossFit gym all the time. They're like, hey, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress. Every rep you do, we want to see a little bit better. But I think that is so true. And a lot of people try to, maybe that's what holds people up, to wait until they do their big thing, the big moment, because they're like waiting for it to feel perfect, for them to look perfect, whatever it is, but that's not life.
And I'm guilty of that too, all the time. All the
Yeah,
time.
same here.
Yeah.
Same here. I might not release a piece of content because I
Yeah.
didn't like the lighting or something. It's like,
Yeah.
no, but the message is strong. People are going to care about that
Yeah.
more than trying to get it perfect. So, lawyer, accountant, and therapist, which you wouldn't necessarily maybe think of, but yeah, you're talking about the mental side of the game is so important too. So I promise that, we're going to get to your story, and I want to do that. We're going to take a quick sponsorship timeout. We're way late to the break. The beautiful part of being my own producer is I get to choose that. So when we're rolling, I just say, keep the train moving, baby. But we're going to take a quick 60-second timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk about Dear Me, I Love You. We'll be right back. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you. And that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight. And Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. All right, guys, we're back in action with Kanchan. And remember, you can connect with her on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all over social media. That's clickable in the show notes, as well as her websites, crumbsandwhiskers.com, and Kanchan Official, which is KANCHAN official.com. Let's get right back to it here. So, I mean, you've been helping and inspiring people all over the world with your personal healing and self-acceptance, deep personal struggles. Can you walk us through the journey of how writing this story, Dear Me, I Love You, has both helped yourself and also now your growing audience?
Right. So I started writing when I went through the darkest time of my life. I was really depressed and anxious actually after the opening of the second location in LA, and imposter syndrome was like eating me alive. I always had it, but it was genuinely eating me alive at the time. And I was like insomniac, and the people who worked for me were like quitting left and right because they were like, I think when you're surrounded by your own fears and insecurities, you become who you think you need to be to like cope, right? Like if I think I have imposter syndrome, I'm going to try and act like the person who in my head wouldn't be the imposter, who is this like CEO, judgmental, demanding, kind of like has their shit together versus somebody like me. And the more I was acting like I was somebody else, the more nobody liked me. And the more nobody liked me, the worse I felt about myself. So like it was just this, it gotten this vicious cycle. And my business coach at the time said that she thought I needed therapy. And she also did that work. And so she was like, I never mixed the two, and we're not going to technically mix the two, but like, let's try this. And so we started doing therapy. And whenever people ask me about my childhood in India, it would just be a black screen. Like I never really understood how people could recount memories, like favorite memories or favorite whatever from childhood. I was like, hey, people remember that? Like,
yeah, my brother sometimes is like, I remember my third birthday, and I'm just like, man, the only way I remember it is seeing it in a picture, but I don't remember like I remember things watching old VHS tapes because that helps me connect the moments. But yeah, I agree, it's not always easy. But
right, yeah. So it was just this like black screen, and it turned out that I had repressed my childhood, and I had repressed it because I grew up with sexual abuse, physical abuse, a lot of emotional kind of shit as well. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And
we're PG-13-ish, somewhere in there.
And those things had very much informed and cemented my beliefs about myself and who, and so in therapy, in sort of talking about retrieving those memories and talking about being molested from a young age and talking about being beaten by my own father and all these different things, it was a lot of pain that I had buried away. And I think a lot of highly functional people who might have been through a lot kind of take all of that, put it into a box, put it away, and then become highly functional in the world. And that's how I used to be.
That causes that black screen, that disconnect, right?
Yeah.
It's like you go from not having it to this new version of yourself and have there's a disconnect of kind of the in-between, if you will, like where you're starting to have all those those awkward teenage years where you're growing and stuff, but weren't connecting it back to things because you chose not to. You had some of those horrible situations. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I think it's just psychology, and I'm not a psychologist, so I couldn't speak to how the psychology of it works. But yeah. And when I started opening that Pandora's box inside myself that had been locked away with all of this, there was a lot of rage and grief and shame and guilt and all this stuff. And I was drowning. In all of it. And the only way that I knew how to keep my head above the water was to write. And that was the only way I knew.
And you did poetry too. I just want our audience to know you're talking about writing about your past, but all kind of a journal, but also in poetry too, right?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I hadn't written a word of poetry until I started healing. And then I was crying one day and I pulled out my journal just to write as I normally do. And out came this like perfect 2-page poem. And it was like good. It wasn't like whatever, like I can tell the difference when I create something good versus when I just create something to process something, but I wouldn't necessarily put it out in the world. And I was like, whoa, that's a bomb poem. And I remember I was like crying and I was like distracted from my pain because I was like, what just came out of me? And I've had multiple identity crises since then, but that was one of my first big ones. After that, I couldn't stop writing poetry. Like a week later, I had like 100 poems. And like I was sharing it with people and they were like crying reading it. And it was like powerful for them. And I was like, no. I'm not going to become a poet. Do not do this to me, universe. Like, shut it down. but I couldn't shut it down. And like, it was helping me process, what I was experiencing. And so, and my book isn't just it's poetry, it's prose, it's conversations with my therapist, but poetry is really the emotional, because I write about emotions through poems, but then I write about everything else in like prose.
The poetry part of your writing is a very specific tool, I guess you can call it. I'm kind of failing to come up with the right word. But it sounds like this is just a blessing from the universe, from God, however you want to connect the dots. But it sounds like giving you the talent of writing poetry through dark times was something that was kind of medicinal to you in a sense, right? And healing for you. And also it's healing others because people connect with your artwork, which is, the what you write, pen to paper, if you will. And people still do that. I like to still do that. But you have this art that's helping people out. You have your business, which shows your heart and it connects people. So it's like you're doing it in many different ways. And one thing I wanted to make sure we did with our 45 minutes or so that we have together today is take a moment right now to pause and reflect on the amazing things you have done. I know you didn't come on the show for a pat on the back, but I just want you to know that what you're doing, it's number one, inspiring me because I'm really your first audience member right now. And I know there's so many people tuning in. And I love people that comment on this on YouTube, or if you're maybe you're watching like the preview of this on social media or listening to this on an audio platform. Please be vocal about what we want to know what you're experiencing. So I'm kind of talking directly to our audience right now. And we'd love to help you out. I know I'm available to do that. I know you're on social media and active because you want to help people through. So I just wanted to take a moment to have you realize, hey, you know what? You've been through some dark stuff, but at the same time, that's really what allowed you. We talk about that imperfection. It's allowed you to like springboard into this person who can connect with more and help and heal more people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that's so cool. A couple more questions. We're literally like right at the whistle out of time, and it's crazy. So I'm going to ask you kind of, this isn't a curveball question. Just love to kind of feel where you're going with this. Speaking of writing, it kind of made me think of it. You're the author and protagonist in your own life story, right? So I want you to hypothetically think of this. You're the author and protagonist in your own life story. You get to write the ending, and God willing, that's many, 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 many years from now. You're looking back at it, you're reflecting on it. You get to define your legacy. What would that be?
Oh man, that's a big question in a short amount of thinking time. What I really want to do on the planet is to help millions of people heal and to help, millions of animals, ideally. I mean, it's kind of aggressive, it's kind of ambitious, but if I was being really real, that's what I want. So
that's what you got to be.
Yeah, it would be that. And it would be in terms of what I've done. And then in terms of who I am, it would be somebody who always like lived by her heart, and had an open heart. Because I think if we can all have open hearts, like or if I can leave having an open heart as my legacy, that's to me like one of the greatest legacies you can leave.
That's so good. Your story shows that it's not, it's one of those classic, it's not how you start, it's where you go with it. Or I just posted about this on social media the other day, and I'm going to kind of bastardize the quote, but it's Denzel Washington says, like, it's not what you have, it's kind of what you do with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you did. Like you didn't always have it all. I mean, you were literally, fast food to not having the right outfits for school and feeling like an alien on a different planet. But you still forged through it. And then even, as you were successful, had this imposter syndrome because it's hard to feel like you're separating yourself from kind of where you started.
Mm-hmm.
Not to try to say that anyone's below you. And I know you're not saying that. So you get this imposter thing, and then like you're doing beautiful things, and it's still a struggle. It's never always just like you get over this hump and then it's just a smooth coast. That's not the truth. And your story is really cool because it shows that you continue to learn and grow, and there's different challenges throughout life. But at the end of the day, right now, you are unlocking your heart in many ways, and people can see that, and that is your legacy. So I want you to know, I know, yeah, it's a huge question to drop at the end of the interview, but it's kind of intentional because it's a ... continue to follow Kanchan. Like, people are going to follow your story because it's still early on. You have many more chapters, right? As I said, and I want to know, like, 30-second response if you can. What do you see as far as a vision for, the cafes? Do you see right now you got 2 cities? Do you have a goal of like when you're going to hit 5 or 10?
I see us being an international brand. Now I am cafe. Now I am talking more of a 10 to 20 year, but we get
Sure.
franchise requests from all over the world, and we already are going to be expanding to Boston in the next year, year and
Hmm.
a half. So yeah, I see us in the US and abroad.
I'm getting you. I got the scoop, guys, on Mic'd Up right here with Kanchan, literally like right at the tipping point, which is that 3% mark of market share that we always talk about in business, right? You see it on every like board where there's a and there's this little dot, and that's where Netflix had to break through and everybody else. Once you get to that tipping point, and 3 out of 100 people in an area are talking about something, and then that fourth person's like, "What was that you said?" And then all of a sudden they tell the fifth person, boom, game over. So I feel like you're right there. You're getting close to that tipping point. And I believe you will hit your dreams because you have the personality, the mental know-how, and the action behind it. So the sky's the limit for you. What a pleasure and honor. This is a special interview for me, and one that I'm going to always be proud of. And it's because you're a superstar, and I just love everything that you're about. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mike. I loved being here. Thank you.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mic'd up. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mic'd up. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mic'duppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.